والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. In our Seerah lessons, we're currently in the story of Al-Israa Wal-Mi'raaj, the special night journey and the ascension beyond the heavens. So this is a story which happened within a few minutes, or maybe within less than an hour even. But because so much happened in the story, there was so much that our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ witnessed, this will take many sessions to cover. Because it's not that he was shown these things and he just happened to pass by all of these scenes. There was a reason why, and there's so many things that we can learn from this. So just a quick recap. Last session, the Prophet ﷺ, how did he start this special journey? It was in the 12th year of 12th year of prophethood. The Prophet ﷺ had gone through so much pain, so much test, so many troubles, so many losses, so much difficulty, like physical pain, but also like mentally, it was really difficult for him. So you can say this was a gift from Allah. This is a special gift Allah Ta'ala was giving him. Jibreel alayhi salam, Mikael alayhi salam, and a third angel ascended. They took the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Jibreel alayhi salam drew a line down his chest, which split open his torso, and then his heart was cleansed. This isn't the first time this happened, but this happened again. And Jibreel alayhi salam, he washed his heart with a zamzam, which was in a special bowl made of gold. And it said that it cleansed his heart to remove any kind of pressure that were from his chest. And it was washed 3 times. And any pain, any hurt, any stress, all of these things was removed from his heart. It was washed 3 times, and after every time it was washed, Angel Mikael alayhi salam, he would give a new bowl with fresh zamzam water. And it's written that this bowl and this water, it was full of hikmah, wisdom, iman. And this is what was put into the Prophet ﷺ's heart. Then his heart was placed back into the chest and it was sealed. But the Jibreel alayhi salam, he poured this bowl onto the chest, which had hikmah and iman. Also it had hilm, forbearance, like the ability to endure and understand the purpose of things. The Prophet ﷺ, he had very deep foresight and wisdom. Also what was poured onto the chest was ilm, yaqeen, Islam, all of these things, and it was sealed back up. So it was a very special procedure, very special operation which was taking place here. And then the angels, they brought the buraq, this special animal near the door of the Kaaba, which has been described as white, 4-legged, فوق الحمار, larger than a donkey, but دون البغل, smaller than a mule. And as soon as the Prophet ﷺ sat on this buraq and it started moving, this is where he realized something really special, that whenever this animal would take one step, then it would move and travel further than the eye could see. Each step was miles in distance. And whenever it was going up any mountain, then it's as if the legs got even longer. And mountains didn't slow this buraq down at all. It's been described as having wings which were on the hips of the animal, allowing it to fly. So it was a very special animal. And Jibreel alayhi salam, Mikael alayhi salam, they were both, like it was a special escort. Jibreel on the right, Mikael on the left, and they were flying alongside him. He stopped the first place where he was told to stop and pray 2 rakats. He described, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, described this as a place where there was lots of date palm trees. And Jibreel alayhi salam told him that you have just prayed in a very blessed place. This is the place where you will migrate to, meaning Medina. At that time it was called Yathrib. So even before the migration, he had already traveled there. He had prayed there and he was shown that this is where you're going to migrate to. The second place which he stopped and he prayed, he was told that this is the place of Madian, under the same tree where Musa alayhi salam sat in the shade when he ran away from Misr and took refuge in this place of Madian. And then they carried on traveling. He prayed at a third place, and Jibreel alayhi salam said, you just prayed at Turi Sina, Mount Sinai, where Allah Ta'ala used to speak directly with Musa alayhi salam. Then they reached a place where they could see large palaces. Again, Jibreel alayhi salam asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to descend from the Buraq, perform 2 raka'ah, and then Jibreel alayhi salam told him, you just prayed at the place where Maryam alayhi salam gave birth to Isa alayhi salam in Baytul Laham, in Bethlehem. And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was traveling. And it's interesting that he's literally traveling at the speed of light. Like, we can't even imagine how fast it was going, but still somehow he was able to see all of these things and these places. So now he started to see jinn, groups of jinn. And there was one jinn who kept trying to find a piece of the fire, but was unable to get this piece. Jibreel alayhi salam said, if you say the following words, this fire that the jinn keeps trying to seek will be extinguished. And this is when he taught him the dua, that a'udhu bi wajhillahil kareem, until the end. So this, what he was seeing, it was like symbolic, meaning the angel was telling Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the jinn is trying to do something bad here, trying to attempt something evil. And then when you read this dua, it will extinguish this fire, meaning it will take this fuel away, and the jinn won't be able to cause any havoc or any problems or cause any harm. And this is exactly what happened. As soon as the Prophet ﷺ read this special dua, the fire that the jinn was chasing was extinguished and it was gone. And then they kept traveling. They saw a group of people. They would sow the seeds, turn the soil, and next day it was ready for harvest. Everything would have grown. And as soon as they harvest, the crop returned to how it was originally. So Jibreel alayhi salam explained that these are the people who strive and struggle in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Their good deeds are multiplied by 700 times. And whatever and whenever they spend, no matter how small it is, it's returned back to them in manyfold. Like, think about this symbolism here. Like, they're sowing the seeds one day, and the next day, something which normally would take months, that it's ready to harvest. So this is the reward of someone who strives in the path of Allah and spends for the sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ continued traveling. Then he smelt rihan tayyiba, extremely fragrant, a beautiful smell. And it was like a beautiful breeze he was passing by. And he'd never experienced and never smelled anything like this before. And then Jibreel alayhi salam told him, this is the scent coming from the woman who used to comb the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun. And this is also the fragrance of the woman's children. So the story, we have heard and read the story many times in length, where this lady was brushing the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun. The comb dropped to the floor and she picked it up and said, Bismillah. This is something, the daughter was shocked. Like, is there a Lord other than my father? And she said, of course, Rabbi wa Rabbukillah, my Lord, your Lord is Allah. She was summoned, her and her family, by Fir'aun, and told her, tried to force her, you need to renounce this religion, believe in me, accept me as your Lord. Her faith and iman was so strong that she was threatened to be melted or to be burned alive in this cauldron of burning oil and steel, but still she didn't give in. Still she held on to her faith. One by one, her and her children, her husband, they all passed away. They were all thrown into this cauldron. And because of it, Allah Ta'ala was so happy with her and her family, of how patient, how strong they were, that He made it so that on this special journey of Al-Isra, He smelled this rihan tayyiba, this fragrance that was because of that sacrifice. So this journey, like we said, it was very quick, but there were so many observations along the way. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he came upon a people, their heads were being crushed. Brutally, their heads were being crushed, and every time their heads were crushed, it would return to the original form. And then again, their heads will be crushed, and after being crushed, then it was returned to the original form, a repetitive cycle that kept happening. So then the Prophet ﷺ asked, Ya Jibreel, man ha'ula, who are these people? Jibreel ﷺ replied, these are the people whose heads were too busy for the fard salah, too busy for the obligatory prayer. Meaning their heads were so utilized in other things, in worldly things, in business, in money, in family, whatever it is. Like they kept track of everything else, but not for the salah, not for full salah. They kept missing their salah. And this was the punishment for them. This will be the punishment for people who completely neglect their salah. Then they came upon a people, on top of them and on the back of them were patches. And these people, they were wandering, they were just roaming around like animals, like cattle, like sheep or camels, and they were eating dhari'ah. So dhari' is something mentioned in the Quran, لَيْسَ لَهُمْ طَعَامٌ إِلَّا مِنْ dhari'. That for the people of Jahannam, there will be no food except from dhari', which is explained to be something poisonous, like a thorny plant. And it doesn't nourish, it doesn't remove away hunger, but it's just poisonous. And it's written in tafsir that dhari'ah is a type of plant that's thorny and stuck down to the earth. If it was wet, then the Quraysh referred to it as shighra, otherwise it's dhari'ah. No animal or creature goes near it or grazes on it. It's a very poisonous plant. It's the worst type of food you can imagine. And the second thing that's mentioned here, they were eating zaqqum. Zaqqum is another plant which is mentioned numerous times in the Quran, and this is the food of the people of hell. So it's from the word tazaqqum, which means to violently vomit, like your insides are literally coming out. So zaqqum is nourished like this plant. Normally we water plants and we nourish them that way, but these plants are different. They're nourished by the hellfire. Like the fire keeps them going. So these people who the Prophet ﷺ witnessed, they're roaming around like animals, and they have patches on their body, and they're eating dhari'ah and zaqqum. And they were also eating the stones of the fire of hell. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's seeing this. Imagine how scary this must be for him to witness. So he said, who are these people? Tell me, who are these people? Jibreel alayhi salam, he replied, these are the people that لا تؤدن صدقات أموالهم. They did not give the zakat of their wealth. They would withhold their wealth, and they would not pay the obligatory charity which was due on them. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was really unsettled. Imagine if we were to see these, how would we feel? The Prophet ﷺ, it was even more concerning for him, because these were the people of his ummah who were being punished, and he doesn't want any harm to come to his people. So he's rahmatul lil alameen. He's all about mercy, love, and he's terrified for these people now. So Jibreel alayhi salam, he actually saw the Prophet ﷺ's face, that he was worried, he was scared, he was concerned. So to put him at ease, Jibreel alayhi salam said, وَمَا ظَلَمَهُمُ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا. Allah did not wrong these people in the least. Like they did it to themselves. It was their fault. It was their doing. Allah is not wronging them at all. Then they continued traveling. Then they came across another group of people. And right in front of these people, there was meat that was being roasted in huge pots. And there was very good, well-cooked meat, like good quality, good barbecued meat in front of these people. But then on the other side, like maybe like on the floor somewhere, there was another type of meat, nayyi'un khabithun. It was raw, like very raw, and it was spoiled. It was gone bad, gone off. So these people, they moved forward to eat, but instead of eating the good meat, the nice roasted, cooked meat, they started to eat from the trays that contained this gone off, like rotted meat. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he asked, "Ma hadha ya Jibreel? What's this? What's happening here?" So Jibreel ﷺ replied, "This is a man from your ummah who has a wife, and he is properly married to this wife. This wife is halal for him. She is tayyiban, not just any wife. She's a beautiful, she's a chaste woman. She has good character. This is what tayyiban is. But this man, instead, he goes to another woman who is immoral and sinful, and then he sleeps with her. He commits sin with her, and he spends the night with her. And amongst this crowd also, you see people, there's also women who walk away from their husbands of good character and sleep with other sinful men. And she stays the night with him until the morning time. So this was the punishment of those people, that they left their good husband or their good wife and they went and committed sin with other people. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he's passing by and he sees that there's a lot of wood lying around in the middle of the road. And anyone who passes by this wood, they have their clothes torn from the wood. The clothes catch on this wood. It's difficult to get past and it's pulling at their clothes. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked Jibreel ﷺ, what's this? Jibreel ﷺ said, this is the example of the people from your ummah who sit on the roads, sit on the paths. And then people travel across and they block the people. So similar thing is mentioned in Surah A'raf that وَلَا تَقْعُدُوا بِكُلِّ صِرَاطٍ تُوعِدُونَ وَتَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِي وَتَبْغُونَهَا عِوَجًا. That Jibreel alayhi salam, he recited this verse, and do not sit on every path, threatening and averting from the way of Allah those who believe in Him, seeking to make Him deviant. Ila akhiri. So this could have two meanings, that either people, these kind of people, they just sit and wait on the path, wait on the road to try steal from people, or to try harm people, or cause trouble to people. Or it could be people, they try to confuse and lead the believers away, confuse them in their iman, confuse them in their religion. And this is what was happening to them. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he went forward and he saw people يَسْبَحُ فِي نَحْرِهِمْ مِنْ دَمٍ, that they saw a man, he was swimming in a river of blood, and rocks were being thrown, and these rocks were falling into the mouth of the man. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked Jibreel ﷺ that, who is this man? Jibreel ﷺ replied, this is someone who consumed riba, someone who took interest. Imagine how scary this is. He's swimming in blood and then rocks are being thrown into his mouth. Allah Ta'ala save us from this. Then the Prophet ﷺ came across a people from whom there was someone that حِزْمَةً عَزِيمَةً لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ حَمْلَهَا, or كما قال, that he had a huge piece of luggage, like baggage, and it was strapped to his back. And it's so heavy, like لا يستطيعون حملها, he can't carry this, and he's like he's pinned to the ground. It's so heavy. And then on top of that, وَهُوَ يَزِيدُ عَلَيْهِ, people are taking more bags and more luggage, and they're adding that to the man's back. Then the Prophet ﷺ asked Jibreel ﷺ that, what's happening here? Jibreel ﷺ replied, this is someone who has an amana, who has a trust. People gave him things for safekeeping, but he wasn't able to return people's amana back to them. But instead, he kept taking more things from them. He already couldn't return the things he had taken, and on top of that, he's taking more things from the people. And then they carry on the journey. The Prophet ﷺ, he then came across a people that تُقْرَضُ أَلْسِنَتُهُمْ وَشِفَاهَهُمْ بِمَقَارِضٍ مِّنْ حَدِيدٍ, that whose tongues and lips were being chopped off with huge scissors that were molded from iron. And every time their lips and their tongues were chopped off, they grew back to their original form. And this kept happening over and over again. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked, Man ha'ula ya Jibreel, who are these people? Jibreel ﷺ said, Ha'ula khutaba'ul fitnatin min ummatik. These are the troublemaking preachers from your ummah. Yaquluna ma la yaf'alun. They preach, but they don't practice upon what they preach. They tell people to do things, but they themselves don't act upon this knowledge. Allah Ta'ala save us from this. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he came across people who lahum adfaruhum min nuhasim yakhmishuna wujuhahum wa sudurahum. They had nails which were made from copper, and the people were literally peeling and scratching off their own faces and their own chests. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked, who are these people, Ya Jibreel? And then he replied, these are the people who yakuluna luhuman nas. They used to eat the flesh of other people, and they would lay their hands on the people's honor and dignity. They would lay their hands, meaning they would just like play with the dignity and the honor of people like it didn't mean anything. And Jibreel alayhi salam, he is not talking about cannibalism here, like literally eating their flesh. He was talking about ghiba, backbiting. To which the Prophet ﷺ explained, "Dhikru akhaka bima yukrahu," to say something about someone that they wouldn't like, that they wouldn't appreciate you saying that about him, even if it's true. Like the Sahabas actually asked the Prophet ﷺ, "What if it's true? What if we're actually saying about that person, it's the truth?" Then he said, "That's ghiba. But if it's not true, then that's called tuhma. That's slandering. To say something about someone, that's a lie. That's even worse. And this will be their punishment. Eating somebody else's, eating the flesh and of the other people." And the Prophet ﷺ asked, he came across this small, tiny rock, this small stone, and then يَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ ثَوْرٌ عَظِيمٌ, a huge bull came out of this very tiny rock. And after this bull, it came out, it materialized. Then the bull tries to go back inside this stone, like tries to shove itself back inside, but of course it's unable to go back inside. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked that, "Man hada ya Jibreel? What's happening here?" Jibreel alayhi salam said, "This is someone yatakallamu bikalimatin azima." He would say very big things, like he would talk about really major, serious issues, but like unnecessary things. He would talk about like serious things, but thumma yandimu alayha, then he would regret. He would regret saying these things, but then فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُ أَن يَرُدَّهَا, but he can't take back what he said. He can't take back. He'd said some things that maybe caused big problems, maybe said things that were very sinful, and he regretted now, but then he'd never be able to take those things back. The damage was done. So all of these things which the Prophet ﷺ witnessed, and we've heard this, and this is by the way, the Prophet ﷺ, he's narrating this story to his companions, and it's very deep and it's very heavy, but from this point onwards, like it gets a little bit easier. And remember, this Al-Israa Wal-Mi'raaj, this special night journey, this is, you can kind of say, a key landmark in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, because later on, like after the return of this journey, Salah became obligatory, and this is the first major hukum from the ahkam of Islam. And then this opened the door of tarbiyah, like how Islam developed even more the iman of the people, and the door of all these rules and ahkam were established. And this was all leading to the establishment of the full-scale Muslim community, because this happened not too long before the hijrah to Medina. So this is why the first place which the Prophet ﷺ stopped on this journey was Medina, and he prayed 2 rak'ah there. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he's seeing all these things, and these are all the major sins which are forbidding, haram on the Ummah. And these are very scary images, very, very scary. And he was frightened, but these were the reality of these sins. And these sins, this picture was painted for us, or for the Prophet ﷺ, so he could come back and he could warn us. And he'd warn us in a way that like was so serious, because he witnessed himself with his own eyes the punishment of these sins. So anytime he told us, or he told the Ummah, that don't commit usury, like don't bribe, don't cheat, don't consume interest, don't commit adultery, don't backbite, don't preach what you don't practice. Like when he's preaching these things, he's not just saying these things lightly. It's really heavy for him and really difficult for him to say these things, because these images are now coming in his head when he's telling us and trying to warn us from these things. And whenever he warned people about these specific major sins, it probably really emotional for him, because he knows what the consequences is going to be. And of course he loves his ummah so much. Like he used to cry for us, he bled for us, he sacrificed for us, he lost family members for us. And the Sahaba radiallahu anh, they would describe the Prophet ﷺ as someone who was literally like a father for them. He treated them like his own children, like his own brothers, and he never wanted the least harm to come to this ummah. But now he's having to witness his own ummah being tortured or being punished, knowing that this is what might happen to them if I can't save them and if I can't encourage them to stay away from these sins. So imagine how hard it was for him to go past all of these things. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he came back and he informed us. He informed the Sahaba of all of these things. He warned them that this is the ugly reality of these sins. Don't take them lightly anymore. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he arrived at a valley. Then فَوَجَدَ رِيحًا طَيِّبَةً بَارِدَةً, and he experienced a very cool, beautiful breeze. كَرِيحِ الْمِسْكِ, that smelled like the beautiful fragrance of musk. And then he heard a sound. And then he asked Jibreel alayhi salam that, what's this sound? Jibreel alayhi salam said, هَذَا صَوْتُ الْجَنَّةِ, this is the voice of Jannah. And Jannah is making dua to Allah. That Jannah actually starts speaking and it said, Ya Rabbi itini bima wa'adtani, bring to me what you have promised me. فَقَدْ كَثُرَتْ غُرْفِي, because my rooms have become very abundant. وَاسْتَبْرَقِي, and the couches and the cushions which I have become very abundant. وَحَرِيرِي, the silk that I contain has become abundant. وَسُنْدُسِي وَعَبْرَقِي وَلُؤْلُئِي وَمَرْجَانِي وَفِضَّتِي وَذَهَبِي وَأَكْوَابِي وَصِحَافِي وَأَبَارِقِي وَمَرَاكِبِي وَعَسْلِي وَمَائِي وَلَبَنِي وَخَمْرِي. Jannah just keeps on speaking and keeps on going on and on about all the different things, all the luxurious things which it contains, such as clothing, pearls, jewels, plates, transportation, rivers of honey, rivers of milk, rivers of pure wine. All of these things he's saying, oh, like, where, bring the people which you have promised me, because all these things I have so much of them. When will you bring to me what you have promised me? Then Allah responds to Jannah, Laki kullu muslimin wa muslimatin wa mu'minin wa mu'minatin. For you will be every Muslim man and woman, every believing man and woman. وَمَنْ آمَنَ بِي وَرُسُلِي, and the people who believed in me and my messengers. وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and those people who did good deeds and they didn't associate any partners with me. وَمَنْ خَشِيَنِي, the people who feared me, but the people who were overwhelmed when they used to think of me. وَمَنْ سَأَلَنِي فَأَعْطَيْتُهُ, then whoever asks me of anything, I give them. Someone who gives me a loan. Like, what does it mean by giving Allah alone? Oh, Allah doesn't need a loan. It means someone who gives charity in the name of Allah. Then jazaytuhu, I reward that person. وَمَنْ تَوَكَّلَ عَلَيَّ كَفَيْتُهُ, someone who puts their trust in me, I take care of that person. إِنِّي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا, without a doubt, I am most definitely Allah. There is no one worthy of worship except me. لَا أَخْلَفُ الْمِيعَادِ, that I do not break my promises. وَقَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the believers have achieved success. وَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ, Allah is the giver of all blessings and He is the most magnificent of anyone who has the ability to create. And then Jannah responds, قَدْ رَضِيتُ, I am satisfied with that, my Lord. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he arrived at another valley. And then فَسَمِعَ صَوْتًا مُنْكَرًا, he heard a very scary, a very terrible sound. فَوَجَدَ رِيحًا مُنْتَنِتًا, then he came across a scent in that valley which is a very repulsive, very disgusting smell. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked Jibreel alayhi salam that, what's this? Jibreel alayhi salam replied, هَذَا صَوْتُ جَهَنَّمْ, this is the voice of Jahannam. And then Jahannam starts speaking to Allah and makes dua to Allah that, Ya Rabbi itini bima wa'atani, bring to me that which you have promised me. فَقَدْ كَثُرَتْ سَلَاسِلِي وَأَغْلَالِي وَسَعِيلِي وَحَمِيمِي وَضَرِيعِي وَغَسَّاقِي وَعَذَابِي, because my chains and my shackles and my flames and my boiling hot water and my thorny plants and my brew, like this soup which was made by the pus and blood of the people. I'm overflowing with all of these things. وَقَدْ بَعُرَ قَعْرِي وَاشْتَدَّ حَرِّي, that my depth, like the distance going down all the way to the bottom, of Jahannam is very long, it's very far, and my temperature is constantly rising. So bring to me, O Allah, what you have promised me. And then Allah Ta'ala responded to Jahannam, for you will be every shirk committing man and woman, every disbelieving man and woman, every evil man and woman, and each and every single hard-hearted soul who does not believe in the day of reckoning. Jahannam responded, قَدْ رَضِيتُ, I am satisfied with that, my Lord. Then the Prophet ﷺ told his Sahaba that he saw the Dajjal, the Antichrist, in its true form. And he was actually telling him that this wasn't, telling the companions that this wasn't a dream. I actually saw him with my own eyes. So then one of the Sahaba, he asked, Ya Rasulullah, how did you see him? Like, tell me, what did you see? The Prophet ﷺ said, I saw him with my own eyes. I saw him as a huge man. One of his eyes was damaged and bulging out. His hair was wild and frayed like the branches of a tree. I would say that he looked something like Abdul Uzza bin Khutam. That was a man at that time, which they knew, that وَرَاءَ عُمُودًا أَبْيَضُ كَأَنَّهُ لُؤْلُؤ. And then after this, I saw a beautiful pillar, this pristine pillar, this white pillar that looked like it was carved out of pearls. تَحْمِلُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, and they were angels carrying this pillar. So I asked them where they were carrying this pillar. They said, this is the pillar of Islam. We were commanded to place this in Ash-Sham, specifically Syria. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he kept going forward. And then someone from his right called to him that, Ya Muhammad, that Anzirni as'alak, that wait for me, I need to ask you something. But then the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't respond and he kept moving on. And then he asked Jibreel alayhi salam that, what was that? Jibreel alayhi salam replied, this caller is from the Yahud. If you would have responded to him, then your Ummah would have turned to Judaism. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he kept going forward. And then someone from his left side called to him and said the same thing, that wait for me, I need to ask you something. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't respond. He asked Jibreel alayhi salam the same question. And he replied, this is from the Nasara, the Christians. If you had responded to him, then your Ummah would have turned to Christianity. So what does this mean? Being called from both sides and not responding. This is, you can say, a representation of the fact that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sharia, it's about to blossom and unfold and become available now to all of humanity, like the full scale of the Sharia, like his entire lifestyle and all the commandments of Islam. And this Islam is a representation of Deen al-Hanafiyyah, meaning the straight path, not left, not right, the middle path, the same path that Ibrahim alayhi salam walked upon. That not going left or right, but focusing just on the straight course that Allah Ta'ala laid down for us and not being distracted. And the scholars of Seerah, they mention that it also could mean that your Ummah, if you had responded to this, would have fallen into the same fitna, the same trials, the problems, theological problems that the Christians and the Jews fell into, like the rejection of faith, or the altering of the religion, the changing of the rules, or the personification of God, all of these things. But just like you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you didn't pay attention to the noise on the left or the right. You will continue to walk down the middle and you will lead your Ummah to the straight path. And as long as you keep walking down this straight path, your Ummah will keep following you and their Iman will be safe and everything will be okay. I think we'll leave it there, inshallah. So many things we can learn from this, and if we get time after we finish the story, we'll go back into some of these lessons. These are things which we really need to delve a bit deeper into and take a lot of lessons from. Because when he was telling this to the companions, of course they mentioned the story, but a lot of other rulings and teachings were mentioned as well. And then probably next week we'll get to the point where he will finally reach Masjid al-Aqsa. And then what happens in Masjid al-Aqsa and what happens from there onwards, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to take the correct lessons from this, and then all of these sins which were mentioned and warnings and punishments which were kind of explained to us. May Allah Ta'ala safeguard us and safeguard us and our families and from the entire Ummah from all these kinds of sins and these kinds of haram. And Allah Ta'ala save us from all these punishments. And Allah Ta'ala allow us to be one of the people of Jannah who will be experiencing and who will be enjoying all of these amazing blessings in Jannah. Like when I was reading that, like it really paints a picture in your mind of how Jannah will be, and then it creates that longing and that desire to be there. And Allah Ta'ala save us from all the punishment of hell, like all these zaqum and dari and all these things, like such a painful punishment for those people. Allah Ta'ala safeguard us all. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Ameen.